My name is Tom McConville and I'm from Newcastle upon Tyne, brought up in the northeast in a pub called the Globe, which is down by Scotswood Road there, and I was brought up there in the very early 50s, and my dad was a singer, my mum was a singer, and everybody that came in the pub thought they could sing, and but we had some great people coming in, and that's where I learnt my first music really. My first gig was in the Globe, which incidentally is still running, and first gig was in 1954. I was 3 years old. He stood me on a table, gave me some draft bass, and I sang "Bimbo, Bimbo, what you gonna do, you?" And I'm moving. That was me set for the rest of my life. I started playing the fiddle when I was 6 years old. I used to have classical lessons at school once a week, and but I wasn't very good at it really, reading the music, but I could play the fiddle all right. And but I learned a lot of music from the people in my dad's pub. They weren't always very accurate, but very, very passionate, and that's been the story of my life ever since really. And I moved into, as a teenager, like I got into Bob Dylan and all the rest of the things, and soul music and blues and everything like that. And I hung around with some Hells Angels in Newcastle for a little while, and I was a big softie, but I was invited in because I could play the fiddle anyway. I started going to folk clubs in my teenage years in the 60s, around Newcastle. And across Gateshead and all over the place. I was working at the time when I left school as a laboratory technician, an assistant, and then I become an assistant chemist in a factory. And I was very, very bad at it, and I ended up in a place in Cramlington as a chemist, and I'd take me fiddle to work, and the managing director came in one day and he said, "You're pretty good on the fiddle, and I don't think you're any good at here. I think you should do that for a job." So I left and went on the road. I left Newcastle in 1970, went across to Ireland to the Rose of Tralee festival with my fiddle, and met a bunch of people there, a bunch of Geordies there who were living in Leeds, and they said, "Why don't you come down and live in Leeds? There's plenty of Irish music there and lots of music." And my professional career started. I didn't have any work. I didn't have a telephone. I didn't have a car. I had nothing, and that's how I started. And I started hitching around the country with my fiddle and going to gigs with a fella called Mick Elliott, who was a professional comedian and a very, very great actor. And so he taught me how to use the stage and etc. And I got a gig, he got me a gig actually with the legendary Stephen Grappelli as a support to Stephen Grappelli, which was hilarious because I got up and played a few Irish jigs and all these jazz aficionados were wondering what I was doing there. But it was a great experience, and that was really touched me amazingly for seeing Grappelli. And then a man called Sean Maguire came to Newcastle, who was a bit of a genius on the fiddle, and I think both players influenced me very, very much because they actually instilled in me, after chatting to them, that the only way to play the fiddle is your own way, and if you're not steeped in Hebridean music or music from Devon or whatever, you have to look to where you come from. And so I always play with being a Geordie in mind, no matter what I'm playing, whether it's jazz or Irish music or swing. So I formed different partnerships and bands over the years. I did a lot of travelling. I travelled all around America, and I think the first tour in America was 14,000 miles. Drove that from California up to Canada, from Canada down to Mexico, and then back to California again. Great experience. Never made any money, of course. No mobile phones, no phones home or whatever. But you just had to sort of exist on your own wits, really. So it was great fun. And then meanwhile, doing lots and lots of solo gigs, stand-up gigs in folk clubs around the UK, and then across with bands into Germany. For a good while, I was with Phonogram Holland with a group called Magna Carta, and at the time, 1980-ish, I think, 79, 80ish. The great Dire Straits were on the same record company. Dire Straits were brilliant, and we were not really. So Dire Straits, quite rightly, became very, very famous. And I wasn't allowed to go to any of the meetings where there was lots of posh wine and stuff like that. I was just a musician on the road. But that was a great eye-opener. Travelled all around Spain. When Franco died, we were allowed in to play. And they were letting anybody in, really, to be honest. And we were doing bull rings and things like that. Lots and lots of thousands of people in the audience. Great fun. There was one very entertaining thing. I was in Madrid. I was out busking, and I went down on the underground to busk. No sooner had I got my fiddle out, this woman arrived with a baby and sat next to me, and then a man came along with a false leg, which he took off, and they both sat beside me, and they took the money that I made. That was one of my first lessons in outdoor busking. So, and I'm continuing to play. I'm addicted to the fiddle, to the violin, all sorts of different styles. I'm still working. I'm known as the Newcastle Fiddle Player, and I've played the Sage, as it was known. Now it's called the Glass House, and that. I'm in touch with a lovely musician who's from here but lives in Glasgow, and I've formed a great relationship with a lot of people in Glasgow, the young players, and it's great to be acknowledged and to play along and have some of these young players come along and play with me, because they're all fantastic musicians. So again, it's breathing new life into it. I have worked with Barbara Dixon on one of her albums, and well, a couple of her albums actually, and Richard Thompson got me to play on B's Wing as well, which was absolutely fantastic. So all in all, generally, I've had a wonderful time up to now, and it's still going on.